broadcasting live from the Pacific Northwest. My name is Maya Johnson. Thank you very much for joining us. This is ESHA Research's latest webinar. The topic today will be restaurant menu labeling and how to use Genesis to approach the newly released guidelines. This webinar will be recorded and available on our website after this session. We'll also send out a link via email within the next 24 hours. As a reminder, this webinar will focus on restaurant menu labeling rather than the newly released nutrition fact panel labeling rules. Stay tuned for additional webinars to come. During this time of rapid change, we know there is a lot of uncertainty, and we are here to help you wade through these industry transformations. In addition to webinars, we also offer professional and advanced trainings. You can see the next upcoming dates listed here. If you'd prefer to have on-site training, we can also come to your site and train multiple people at a time, should that work better for your company. We'd love to hear from you during this webinar. Please feel free to chat us with questions. If we don't get to all of your questions, we will follow up later. A little background about ESHA for those of you who are new. ESHA was established in 1981 with the goal of providing a comprehensive nutrition database with few missing values. Our software options are used in food and supplement formulation and labeling, nutrition analysis, and of course restaurant menu analysis and labeling, which we'll be discussing today. We also offer consulting services for any number of special handling type projects, from creating one label to answering regulatory questions to helping you establish a compliant approach to restaurant menu labeling. We are here to help. A little bit of background about Genesis itself. The first version of Genesis was released in 1991. It is widely used in multiple industries and seems to be growing. A few things that can be accomplished using Genesis are nutrient menu analysis, label compliance, recipe formulation, and product development, as well as providing a way to keep track of your changes for audit needs. So let's dive in. During today's webinar, we will focus on what is covered on the new menu labeling regulations and how Genesis can assist with compliance. We'll start with a review of the guidelines and move into a demonstration of how this translates in Genesis. So, first of all, when is the timeline to comply? The laws were passed May 5th, 2016, and we were given 1 year by the FDA to become compliant. So regulations will begin to be enforced May 5th, 2017. Who is covered under this law? First of all, you have to have at least 20 locations with the same name. This can be a franchise as well, something like a Subway or such like that. You're also going to need to sell substantially the same menu items, and these are a couple examples, things like bakeries, coffee shops, grocery stores, etc. Who might be exempt from these new rules? Well, any establishment that has fewer than 20 locations. Also, establishments that are not stationary, so things like sidewalk carts and food trucks that can move around, they are exempt, as well as airplanes, trains, schools, hospitals, and prisons. Please note that if you do have fewer than 20 locations, however, you'd like to voluntarily be a part of this, you certainly have the option to do so, and we reference the form on this bottom of the slide here. Let's talk about restaurant type foods. This is a big item that is used often in the new regulations. So to define it, it's food usually eaten on the premises while walking away or soon after arriving at another location, and either served in the establishment or processed and prepared primarily in the establishment. A couple examples would be a takeout pizza or a hot slice of pizza from the grocery store, some soup from the hot bar, perhaps foods purchased at a drive-through. Some other examples may include popcorn from a movie theater, a cheeseburger from a fast food joint, or ice cream from an ice cream store. Some exemptions that wouldn't fall under these, the category that would be required to have the caloric information listed are things like condiments. This can be items that are placed on the table or simply kept behind the bar or where you would order food. Temporary menu items, things that are daily specials or seasonal menu items. There's some specific number of days that would be required for different types of items. For instance, a temporary menu item must appear on the menu less than 60 total days of the calendar year. You also can have exemptions on, so if you're trying out a new product or excuse me, a new menu item and you'd like to do sort of a market test, see if your customers are into it or not. So items that are on the menu for less than 90 consecutive days, if you're proposing a market test, would also be exempt. We'll get into some more examples as we move through. A standard menu item is a restaurant type food, which we just talked about, that is routinely included on a menu or menu board or routinely offered as a self-service food or food on display. Calories and additional nutrition information will need to be required for these standard menu items. So this is what we're going to need. We're going to need a calorie declaration, a calorie statement, as well as additional nutritional information for each of those standard menu items. Here's an example of how this might be displayed on a menu. So basically you have the calories listed next to either the price or the name of the item. They must be how they are usually prepared and offered for sale. So however the restaurant usually prepares that item is how the calories would need to be calculated. For things that come in multiple servings, like a buffet style casserole dish or a pizza, you must declare for items that are not in discrete units. So this would be the second example here. So we're talking about a big bowl of pudding at the buffet line. Because those are not put into discrete units, you would need to declare the entire unit calorie information based on the whole. For items like a pizza, where you are cutting it into discrete units, you have the option of declaring either per slice and then referencing the number of slices in a pizza. So this gives the consumer the information that's in one slice, and they can do the math to figure out what's in the entire pizza. They can also declare that pizza based on the entire pizza itself. So you could say 1,600 calories per pizza, and you would need to reference how many slices you had on that pizza. The calorie statement that you're going to need to include somewhere on your menu board is going to go something like this. A 2,000 calorie diet is used as a basis for general nutrition advice. However, individual calorie needs may vary. And then you'll need to have additional information, additional nutrition information available upon request. So this will need to be placed on every menu board that you have visible to the consumer, as well as any menu. The required additional information is listed here. You'll see it's a slightly different list than is included on the nutrition facts panel. So this information can be in a booklet, in a pamphlet. It could be on an iPad that the consumer could go and look onto. There's many different ways you can approach this, just mainly figuring out what works best for your establishment. Let's talk a little bit about the new label regulations versus the new menu regulations. So first of all, one big determining factor here is that nutritional information is determined by how items are usually prepared and offered for sale for restaurant menu regulations. It's not according to reference amount customarily consumed, which is how serving size is determined on a label. As you may have heard in the new regulations on the label, the rack has been reevaluated to reflect more accurate portion sizes that people are eating. The footnote is going to be different on each of these. So the footnote that you'll see on a nutrition facts panel is going to look slightly different than the footnote that we just discussed for a menu. Also on the menu, you will not need to have any reference of % daily value, whereas in the nutrition facts panel, of course, that is required. In the additional nutritional information available, you also won't need to have any vitamins or minerals beyond sodium for the restaurant segment. Of course, those are required on the label, and the new changes are that vitamin A and C are now voluntary, and potassium and vitamin D are now required. You'll see a list down at the bottom which shows the total list of what is required on a label versus what would be required in the additional nutritional information from a restaurant. So we've got slightly different information going on there. A couple clarifications which can be used as different examples. There's many of these, and there's many questions that are out there right now. And as we get more clarification from the FDA, and as people start to move into these examples, we'll be able to answer more of these questions, but I wanted to just talk about a couple main examples. So let's say you go to the same bakery, and from the same bakery you buy a muffin, and you also buy a birthday cake. The muffin, you're going to either eat that right there or within quickly from walking away, so that muffin needs to have the caloric information required. A birthday cake, you're going to take home and share it with multiple people, maybe eat it over a longer period of time. So a birthday cake would not be required to have the caloric information. Let's say you go to the same deli, and from that same deli you get a sandwich, and you also pick up a pound of sliced turkey or cheese. The deli sandwich would definitely need to have all of the options listed for bread, meat, and cheese with calories next to it. Anything that's given to you by weight from a deli is not going to be required, because a pound of sliced turkey is going to be used in multiple occasions, put into multiple sandwiches or quesadillas down the line, so it is not required to have the caloric information. Alcohol is also a little bit confusing, so let's talk about that a little bit more. So just to clarify and make this clear, this definitely only applies to covered establishments and not alcoholic beverage manufacturers. So anything that's listed on the menu would be considered a standard menu item, as we talked about earlier. So if there is a list of beer or wine or mixed drinks on a menu or menu board, you're going to need to have caloric information listed next to it. Self-service bottles of alcohol sold at the counter. Say you buy a burrito and you buy a Corona at the same time. Somewhere next to that Corona, you would need to have the caloric value established there. Drinks considered food on display, this would be tall liquor bottles that are behind the bar. Maybe it's kind of hard for the consumer to view. Many times they're used in a decorative fashion, and they might have some dark lights behind them. Those are not required to have the information. Beer on tap is also not required to have the caloric information. This could be something that rotates often, maybe weekly or seasonally, and so you will not be required to have that. Then let's say we just go buy a bottle of beer in the grocery store aisle. This is still not, the label is not going to have the information. That is still regulated by the TTB. And I'm going to bring up an example here, if you just bear with me. So here we have an example of a menu, and this was made by our very talented graphic artist in-house. So here we've got, I'm going to move through the examples. Up at the top here we have red wine shown as a category for which all wines listed have the same caloric value, and for which the caloric values are displayed adjacent to the price. So we've got the caloric value and the price, and this grouping of red wine all contains the same calories. Here's a second example. We've got also red wine, but and they all have the same caloric value, but this time we've listed them out. And we also have the calories displayed next to the red wine grouping, so it's displayed adjacent to the name of the item. And the third example, we have wines listed separately for when the caloric values vary, and the caloric values are adjacent to the price. And here we have, when we have a range of red wine, we have not, this will be when you have 3 or more varieties. They can be declared in a range. If you categorize them as a general category here, such as red wine, we've got 90 to 30 calories next to the red wine. with me 1 second. I'm switching back over to my PowerPoint. So there's a couple different ways that you can get this information for your menu. So acceptable ways would be nutrient databases, cookbooks that have published nutrient analysis, laboratory analysis, or other reasonable means. Nutrition facts labels on packaged foods that comply with the nutrition labeling requirements, for example. If you do decide to go with database analysis, what you'll need to keep track of a number of things: the database name, version, and version date, the name of the software company, the software version and the version number, as well as the website address for the database or software. This provides a good segue into moving into Genesis, which is can be used to perform menu analysis based on the new regulations. My colleague Ben, who is in sales team, will now demonstrate how to approach menu analysis in Genesis.
Thank you, Maya. I'm going to go ahead and open up Genesis here. This demonstration of the food menu in Genesis will assume you have a basic understanding of how to use Genesis, how to create ingredients, and how to create recipes. So the food menu and food menu report was built with restaurants in mind to show the information needed. So we'll go ahead and start with just creating a brand new food menu. Go to either Home, New, Food Menu, or go to File, New, Food Menu. Just to create the brand new one, we'll just want to give it a name, so New Food Menu. There's a few optional fields that you can enter in here. Just like an ingredient or a recipe, you can give a food menu a user code. As we go down to the tabs here, you can also go into the groups to assign your food menu into a group. Or there are 3 notes fields that you can enter notes into your food menu. So all very similar to the way you do for ingredients or recipes. Let's go ahead and hit OK. And this will be the window that we originally start adding items into our food menu. The first thing that we can do, as we see right here, the food menu starts with just a unassigned category. So none of the items that we would add in would be assigned to a specific category name. If we right-click in the open area down below, we can do Add Category, and we'll add a brand new category just as Category 1. If we add another category, it'll just be Category 2. To rename those categories, we can just click on it, right-click, Modify Item, and now we're going to add in cakes. And then the second category we could modify it to be muffins. And as we add items into our food menu, we will then add them. They will automatically become unassigned, and we can either modify those items or drag and drop those items to change to the different categories. We'll go ahead and just search for items. Searching for food menu items is just like adding items into a recipe. So if we search for cake, we got a few hundred items that we've got come up here. So let's add in some random cake mix here and select the item. When you add an item into a food menu, it will grab the default quantity and measure for the item. So if your ingredient or recipe, a recipe will always be 1 serving. A ingredient will always be 1 either serving or 1 volume measurement, or however the ingredient is created. So if you added the ingredient as 100 grams, and that's how it's created, that's how much of the item will be added into your food menu. You can't edit that very easily. Again, we go in, right-click on the item, modify, and we have the option to change the quantity and measure. We have the option to change the category, unassigned cakes, muffins. We can add a price in as well. Pricing for the food menu is completely independent for just this one food menu, so it's not tied to the cost field within ingredients and recipes. It's just to add in a price for this one specific food menu. So this cake mix angel food will not be saved with this price outside of this one specific food menu. So let's say it's $6.99. We click OK. Again, we can either change the category from in that modify menu. So if I go back to modify and change this to cakes, as it should be, We hit OK, and we'll change it right over to this other category, or we can just left click on it and drag it and move it into the other category. So either way, it works perfectly fine. Again, going back to searching, all the same search functions that you would do for a recipe are the same for a food menu. So the more search field, you can search for specific groups. You can search for name, government code, ESHA code, user code, all the other different search fields that you would possibly want. Or you can do by nutrient search, name only search. So a lot of different searching options. Food menus can add ingredients and recipes as well. So if we search for, say, our sample item, as we always have that in the database, you notice the coloring difference of the green items versus purple. Green items will always be ingredients, dark green will be user-created ingredients, and then purple will be recipes. So you can add either item into a food menu, and you can combine them. We can also change the columns that we want to display within the base view of the food menu, just like we would in a recipe. So if we right-click in the area here and go to Display Columns, we'll have the option to show a number of primary columns, item, quantity, measure, price, user code, a number of different things, or we can choose nutrients too. So I'll go ahead and just change my nutrients to show calories and fat, protein, and carbohydrates. Kind of a simple set. We go ahead and just hit OK and OK, and we'll expand this view out to show that for all of our different items. I'll go ahead and take a look at the food menu report now. Before I do that, I'm going to open up a existing food menu that I created beforehand. That way I don't have to show adding all of these items individually while we do this webinar. So File, Open, Food Menu. I've just got my existing food menu that I'm going to go ahead and open up here. I'll close my new one and save it. So now we've got an existing food menu with a number of different items in, both ESHA ingredients, user-defined ingredients, and a recipe as well. As we view the food menu report, there is a base set of information that it will show, and then a few different optional fields that you can display. So the base information will be the item name, the quantity and measure, and then the 11 nutrients that you have to show, and those will all be label rounded information for the nutrients. So these are all rounded as needed. And then as we go across, we have a few optional fields that we can add in, as I mentioned. So we have price, and these are just checking the checkbox to add them in. We can add in price. We can add in the allergens as a X or a blank for each individual allergen. We can show the allergen statement, so contains allergens. The additional allergen statement, which none of my allergens were checked for any of those, so it's not showing. The comments for items, so if we go back to the main food menu, when we add in a item, go to that modify item menu, there is a comment section that we can enter information in. So if it's a grilled chicken marinated in ESHA's unique vinaigrette dressing for this specific ingredient, you can add in a little bit of comment information for your specific items in your food menu. And then on that food menu, it will show those comments in the report. You can show the ingredient statement. As we see, some of these items have information, some of them do not for my specific ingredient statement. If there is no ingredient statement for your ingredients, it will just show up as blank. And then we can take a look at the characteristics as well, which will be the group that it is added into. So there's the characteristics groups. I'll go ahead and look at that really quickly. If we go to database and modify, in the groups in the application, there is a folder named characteristics, and that would be dairy-free, gluten-free. I added garlic, kosher, organic, vegan, and vegetarian. If any items that have been added into a food menu are part of one of those groups, it will show up as we see here. It will show up in those characteristics fields. We move back over to the food menu report. The allergens and the ingredient statement. We see the ingredient statement is just showing English right now on my application. You can change which ingredient statement languages show up as well as which allergens show up simply by going into Home, Preferences, Label, And then the languages show French or Spanish checkboxes, mine are unchecked. And then the allergens, you can choose which allergens you'd like to display in your application, either the US, Canadian, or European allergens. There are a number of different ways to export data out of the food menu, out of Genesis. You can either export the menu itself, the food menu report, or a combination of both. So the simplest way to export your food menu would simply be to right-click within the report itself. You can choose either Export Report to File, which will be a text file, or Export Report to Clipboard, which you can then paste into Excel or wherever else you'd like to paste it into. The text file will be a delimited text file, similar to how ESHA port exports, if anyone has any experience with that. You can also export the food menu report as a PDF by going to File, Print to PDF, or you can print it just to a standard printer as well. But print to PDF, and we can take a look at the print preview really quick, and it will just show up right in there as your food menu report. The food menu itself, if you're not wanting to print the report, but maybe a little bit of extra information about the food menu, this is a great way to export unrounded data. So if you go into the report, or into the food menu instead of the report, you can again right-click and export report. There it is. Just couldn't see it for a second there. And similar to a recipe, in the bottom left corner here, you can select which report sections you would like to export. So food menu info is the header, so just the name of the food menu. Food menu list is what we see behind us here. It will export the information shown as well as the display columns. So if you're wanting to show unrounded nutritional values, you can show those display columns with the exact nutrients you'd like, and then export this either to a text file, clipboard, or print it to PDF. Groups, notes, audit trail, and then the food menu report itself can also be added into this. So you can choose what groups it's in, the audit trail, and the food menu report to export all at the same time. Again, that's just by right-clicking and choosing Export Report, or go to File, Print to PDF, and it will give you those options when printing the PDF as well. ESHA port also has the ability to export the food menu. I'm going to open that up really quick for just a moment. Won't get too deep into ESHA port, but if we open up ESHA port here, we can do a new export. Instead of choosing ingredient or recipe for a document type, we can choose a food menu. And with the food menu in ESHA port, you can choose either rounded or unrounded information. So right now we're choosing the unrounded nutrients. We can change that easily to the label rounded nutrients. So we go to our selected fields and edit. We can either select the information for the food menu itself, the information for the food menu items, the ingredients that have been added in or recipes that have been added into the food menu, and then also the nutrients. This allows you to select all 160 nutrients within the Genesis database, and then the allergens as well you can export. We also have a Genesis API that will allow you to export information. It won't work with the food menu, but you can add all of your recipes or ingredients into a single database group and then pull live data using the API into a reader board or your website or however you'd like to pull that data into. Let me make sure I hit all of the information on the food menu. I believe I have here. We're going to move into a little bit of question and answer here now. Maya's going to ask a couple of questions and then we'll take a look at how we can answer those.
Great, thanks Ben for that great demonstration. Let's see, we've gotten a couple questions in. One was about, let's see if I can read this. Can you provide an example of how you declare calories for a product served family style or served buffet style? I was under the impression that a serving utensil is provided for the food product, then the nutrition information can be provided based on a serving provided by the provided utensil. I kind of went into this a little bit. in that regard, you would be providing sort of a serving size for them. So I said you do have the option to voluntarily provide a serving size, but you would still need to declare the overall caloric information on the entire family style batch. If you did have a utensil that was so many ounces, you could reference also 2 ounces provides this many calories. Great question. Another question, are the rounding rules the same as in the nutrition facts panel? Yes, the same rounding rules would apply in each scenario. Let's see, Ben, I think we have a question for you. It's going to say, how can I get access to the food menu report in Genesis?
The food menu report is built right into the application. I believe it was introduced in version 9.12 or 9.13. So long as you have a newer version of Genesis, version 11 will always have it. You can simply just go into File, New, and create a brand new food menu and add your ingredients into your food menu to create the menu and then view the report out of the food menu. So it's not an additional module or anything like that that you have to purchase. It comes with Genesis.
Okay, great. Another question, if you buy a whole pizza, do the calories need to be provided to the consumer 200 calories per slice? You have the option here, so you can provide the caloric information based on the whole pie or on the individual slice and then reference how many slices make up the pie. Let's see, looks like we have a couple more questions coming in. One question was whether or not fiber would be calculated using the new rules based on the nutrition facts panel. And as these regulations for the restaurant menu were released prior to the label regulations, fiber will be calculated using the old rules until that is updated. We're still under the impression as when these were published, those rules were not out yet. So we're still operating under the old fiber rules. Couple more questions popping in here. And again, if we don't get to all of your questions, we'll certainly follow up at a later time. Here's one. How would you display 4 ounces of chicken with 2 ounces of sauce? So this might be a question of perhaps you're building a sandwich or a pizza. So you'd need to have each topping on the pizza will need to have caloric value associated with it, as well as a size. So you would have on your menu, you'd have build your own pizza with the pizza crust would have a certain amount of caloric value. The amount of cheese would have the caloric value, as well as the chicken and sausage would have each caloric value, so that the consumer can choose to see the calories and add them up as they make the pizza. We have a lot of detailed questions coming in that will require some more detailed responses and research, and I think the best option will be to follow up later and during the day to make sure we answer all of your questions completely. One question just came in. Do you anticipate added sugars being added to the restaurant nutrients? It's very hard for me to say. At this point, I'm assuming that because it took so long for these requirements to become published, perhaps they'll stay as is for a while. However, that's really hard to say these days. So thank you so much for joining us. We hope this has been informational, and if you have more questions or more would like to learn a little bit more, please feel free to reach out to us. Thanks very much and have a wonderful day.